What is up, and welcome back to Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. As always, I am your host, Brandon Silvers. It is time to talk about Texas women's basketball. They've had an incredible season and week. I mean, they just beat Vandy. South Carolina took down my number 2 South Carolina Gamecocks, much to my dismay. Followed that up, beating number 8 Kentucky on the road. They got a big one the same day this episode drops against LSU. And every time I've talked about Texas women's basketball on my show, often with the wonderful and talented and knowledgeable Big Lo Dreer, I always look in the comments because I know I'm going to hear about it from this commenter. And normally I don't pay attention to y'all's comments because, well, not y'all's comments. Y'all are awesome. But some people's comments get a little crazy. But these comments, I kept looking back and I was like, okay, this is clearly a Texas fan, but they're knowledgeable. They make a great case for why I'm underrating Texas, perhaps. I don't know if I'm going to agree with it on here, but she's going to make her case. And also, I'm in full agreement with her. Texas women's basketball needs more hype. Reached out to her. She has graciously decided to join me on the show today. Women's basketball fan, Texas super fan, I would say, Kim Singleton. Kim, thank you for coming on.
What's up, Brandon? I'm so honored that you would even think enough to invite me. You know, like I said, I'm just, to me, repping and, being a fan. And, in my view, it's not being a super fan because this is what fandom looks like for me. So it's a normal fan. But yeah, I love Texas and Texas women basketball. So, I try to always be respectful in my comments, but I'm going to come to you with facts, and I'm definitely going to come to you when I disagree with something. And you've always been respectful in your response. So I appreciate the opportunity to come on.
No, absolutely. Yeah, because that is one thing. Because some people, they get a little bit too crazy with this. But I went back and I was like, let me look at these comments a little bit closer. And I'm like, you know what? Kim knows her stuff. Let's see if we can get her on the show. And here you are. So I want to start off. We're going to get into this year's Texas team and how far you think they're going to go. And you can kind of try to alleviate some of my concerns. But first, I have to know, I'm always curious, how did you become a fan of Texas women's basketball?
Yeah, well, I guess I'll say, hopefully I'm older than I look. I'm a graduate of the University of Texas. So I was at Texas from the late 80s. So from 88 through 92. So I arrived at Texas about the same time that, they were a couple of years off their, the undefeated national champion, years from, I think that was 86. So I got there right after that. And so it just so happened, I'm a sports fan in general, born and raised in Dallas. So, of course, Dallas Cowboys, I love football. You arrive at Texas, it's all about football. Football team was not too great. Men's basketball team was up and down. But what was, really good at the time was, Texas women's basketball. And, that's still when you had the Jody Conrad led teams and they were still consistently Final Four, Elite Eight. And so we actually used to joke on campus that they needed to start having the men's basketball team playing Gregory Gym and let the women keep playing in Frank Irwin Center because they were drawing more at that time. They were drawing more for, the women's games than the men's games. And so just through the years, I've continued to be a fan. And obviously they weren't at that level. And so, the Karen Aston, days. So, the Ariel Atkins, there was some good teams there. The Charlie Collier was kind of the last big recruit that Karen had. And so, she had a couple of teams that were, Sweet 16 and touching up against the Elite Eight. But it wasn't really until Vic Schaefer came before to me, it was two things. Vic Schaefer coming and then the Texas Longhorn Network allowed you to be able to see every game because it was hard to be able to see games. I live in Dallas again. I moved back to Dallas. And so I wasn't going to every game. But once you were able to see every game again, and then they were playing really well. I mean, they were, Elite Eight, Vic Schaefer's very first year with none of his recruits. And so it was cool to really see them be back and be more than, again, just kind of a casual fan, because I'm realizing they're playing some really good ball. And so then after he got a couple of recruiting classes, after he got, Rori Harmon, after he got Aaliyah Moore, after, this recruiting class that he has now with Jordan Lee and Justice Carlson and Bree Preston. And by the way, a whole lot of folks sleeping on Bree Preston. That girl is cold. Justice and Jordan get their props because they were already kind of top 10-ish recruits. But, he's really brought in some really good recruits and really good transfers too. Everybody now knows about Kyla Oldacre and, obviously, Taylor Jones. It was also a transfer. Folks don't really realize she's from Texas, but she was in Oregon, transferred to Texas. And he's really, really put together a good squad in 3 out of the last 4 years, been Elite Eight. So, in my view, obviously Rory tearing the ACL last year was devastating for me.
Yeah, that was tough.
Because they were playing great ball starting out last year. Once they got Madison Booker and you had Booker and Harmon and the team around them. And I really felt like they were going to make a run and that would be when they would kind of crack Final Four. And obviously, when Rory went down, everybody, including me, kind of felt like, it's going to be a tall order. I really think, though, without Rory, they overperformed last year. I mean, getting to be a number 1 seed, even though they got bounced in the Elite Eight by NC State. There's no way they should have been able to do that with a freshman playing out of position at point guard. So getting Rory back, having Booker back, and then essentially having the core of that team. I felt like at the beginning of this season, if they stayed healthy, I mean, I said this to people, if they stayed healthy, they would be in the Final Four. And I've seen nothing this year that swayed me from that thought.
Still predicting Final Four. Well, we're definitely going to get into that. But I do want to point out a couple things that caught my attention.
Yes.
First of all, you mentioned your graduation year. If you could, at some point, send me the skincare routine. That would be much appreciated. Number 2, you mentioned how popular these women's games were back in the day.
Yeah.
And that's nice to hear, because often I hear that it just became popular recently, but I need people to know that's not the case.
Yeah.
People have been locked in to women's basketball, even when, like you're saying, it wasn't accessible on TV. Still not as accessible as it should be.
Correct.
Because I try to catch the mid-major games, and
oh, that's tough. I can only imagine.
It is rough. So just hearing kind of your history as a fandom and how the game has grown, and you've got to see this growth, that is just fantastic. Like, yeah, because I feel like we're heading in the right direction. So hopefully we keep trending that way, and people keep understanding, hey, women's hoops is super entertaining. It's here to stay. Throughout your fandom, before we move on to current day Texas, I do want to know, what are some of your favorite moments from Texas teams of the past? So,
like I said, I talked about, some of those teams from the past. So I remember the Charlie Collier, I think this was Karen Aston's, maybe her second to last year. So probably around 18, 19, they played Stanford. And I think Stanford was number 1 at the time in Austin. And Charlie Collier, Jorna Holmes was on that team. They beat Stanford at Austin. That was a big game. I watched that one. The Vic Schaefer's first year, when it was really kind of the bubble year when COVID, when they had the March Madness in San Antonio. So it was, you can say it was a home game for Texas, but it was still social distancing. So it wasn't a packed arena. And they had Maryland. You were facing Maryland, and then that was the Maryland that had Ashley Owusu and Diamond Miller, and Angel Reese was on that team. Yeah, and they were hanging 100 on everybody, and Texas was like a 6 seed with, again, none of Vic Schaefer's recruits, and they beat them. That was a game. I love that game. That was one of my best ones. And then here's another Stanford one. It was Vic Schaefer's first year. They went to Stanford, and Stanford was coming off their national championship, and I think they were ranked 3 at the time. So you had so Haley Jones was on that team, and I'm trying to think of who I was on the team.
Probably Cameron
Brink. Cameron Brink was on the team, so forth. So again, all the big names, and it was Rori Harmon's freshman year, and they went up to Stanford and beat them. And so definitely some really big victories. Big 12 tournament leading up to that Stanford win. That's when they played Baylor. We could never beat Baylor in the Big 12, women's hoops. If they went from Brittany Griner, and I felt like, okay, Brittany's finally gone. We got a shot. They bring in Kalani Brown. I'm like, good Lord. She leaves. I'm like, okay, now we got a shot. They bring in Melissa Smith. I'm like, stop it. Stop it. So we could never beat them, and we beat them to win the Big 12. As a matter of fact, that's the shirt I've got on right now. Yeah. It was from that Big 12 tourney win in Kansas City. So through the years, a lot of good ones, and definitely some of those bigger wins stand out, because I promise you, I've sat and watched them all, and so to beat teams that they weren't expected to beat. It was pretty doggone cool. So
big time. No, and it sounds like, again, predicting Final Four, you're thinking there's going to be some more big victories coming up. So now I want to address my concerns, because I do think clearly a talented team, one of the best defensive teams in the country. Mm-hmm. You've got Madison Booker, one of the great talents in the country. Rori Harmon, who we'll talk about a little bit later too, but one of the better point guards in the nation as well. Yep. You've got a lot of talent. I do worry that y'all might get tripped up. So I want to raise my concerns with you. You let me know if they're valid, and then also let me know why they probably don't matter, because y'all are going to the Final Four and you're going to hang the banner anyways. So I will let that happen. First up, I want to start with the lack of three-point shooting, which is mostly an offensive spacing issue. Mm-hmm. In case people don't know, I take notes for this. I'm actually old school. I also wrote notes, as you can see.
Me too.
The page is highlighted as well.
Low-key impressed there, Brandon.
So I went through, I looked at every national title winner since 2005.
Okay.
Only 2 had fewer three-point attempts per game than Texas currently has now. Texas attempts 10.9 a game. That was, unfortunately for you, 2012 Baylor and 2019 Baylor. Mulkey teams are all over this list. She does not like the three-pointer
not
here.
Shocking to me.
Yes. And then only 2019 Baylor had fewer makes per game. And the current Texas team is tied in percentage at 30.6 with the 2022 Gamecocks. These teams had something different than Texas, which is they all had an All-American post.
Okay.
So how concerned are you about the lack of three-point shooting? And it's not necessarily the three-pointer in general to me. To me, it's more of a spacing issue and an offensive diversity issue, because when I looked at the three-point percentage, even the teams that don't shoot a lot, they're all within the top 100 of percentage, except for that South Carolina team in 2022, which was 186. Texas is 209th compared to everyone else in three-point percentage. So it's not necessarily giving up like the three-pointer itself, because y'all defend the three-pointer as good as anybody too.
Yes.
But more of the spacing problem that it causes on offense. Is this a valid concern, and how much does it matter?
I mean, I think it's valid because obviously it's true. I mean, it's facts, and it's something everybody brings up when they talk about Texas. And I think if Texas, from a traditional standpoint, kind of played a traditional game in a lot of ways offensively, it would be a huge concern of mine. Obviously, it would be better if they, shot the three ball better. I would say number one, I do think they have the ability to shoot the three ball. I just think they're streaky. If you watch it early in the season, Shea Holly was hitting everything. And then she went to a period where she was hitting nothing. And then like Vandy, as a matter of fact, she's the reason we actually stayed in the Notre Dame game, the first half. She had like 4 threes the first half. And then, Vandy game, she got hot again. Jordan Lee has done really well also.
She is fantastic.
So,
both ends of the court, Jordan Lee. I love her game.
Oh, offensively and defensively, yeah, she's been, to me, just a breath of fresh air. And so they do have the ability to do it. But I think the reason it's not as much of a concern for me is I think that, one, to me, Texas is playing a high percentage offensive game that, to me, it's ultimately about getting points on the board. And while obviously you get more points from shooting threes, if you're shooting threes at 30% and your bigs, Taylor and Kyla are, shooting, in the high 50, 60% range, I think I'm going to go inside because those multiple twos are going to add up more than the threes. You make a valid point on spacing, but, Vic is huge on rebounding.
Yes.
Especially on O boards. And while the bigs are obviously expected to do that, he also expects it a lot from his guards. And so a lot of, to me, the spacing issue is created from the fact that guards are crashing, trying to be in there for rebounds and not necessarily looking for the shot. So, I think if you leave them open, for the threes, they're going to hit, more than their fair share. They've been able to shoot folks out of the zone between, being a decent enough 3-point shooting team. The other thing is, I think Texas is an elite mid-range, shooting team too. And that's the other way they back people off of zones and why I'm not overly concerned about the three. But I think it's a valid concern in that, yes, Texas doesn't make or make a lot of threes, but between what they're bringing from an offensive, rebounding standpoint and second chance points, what they bring in terms of their elite mid-range game that I think is a higher percentage than most. And they're just playing a high percentage basketball. And that's not even getting into how they turn you over. They're getting a lot of points off takeaways, and they also get to the line. So by playing such a strong inside game, either with their bigs or their guards driving, they get to the I think they have made more free throws than I think anybody else. They're 1 or 2. In the country. They're pretty high in terms of made free throws, and that's just a function of the way they play. So to me, the offensive output and the way that they play makes up for the fact that they don't make a lot of threes.
And to your point, too, because I watched against Kentucky. Kentucky tried to get into his zone, and Madison Booker basically blew it up on her own.
Yes.
Because a lot of people think that you need to hit threes to get people out of a zone, and hitting threes certainly helps.
Yeah.
But she is fantastic at finding those soft spots in the short corner.
That's exactly where she goes.
Automatic. And then another thing with the zone, when you're playing a zone defense, makes it very hard to get defensive rebounds.
Yes.
And so that even plays into a strength, like you're saying, with the offensive rebounding, especially Kyla Oldacre. Whew, I don't know if I want to see her again as a South Carolina fan. Like, I'm still having nightmares. But
it's so funny too. I just love Kyla because she's so, she's just got this just serious deadpan face. Things can be going great, things can be going poorly, and she's got the exact same face. But I've seen her smile after games, and I've heard her talk in post game comments, and she seems like the just most personable person. But yeah, when she's playing the game, she's all about business, and I love her.
Business. So I do think, like, it's a concern that you only have this concern when you're talking about a team that could be playing for a national title. So, like, it's something that now we're just kind of splitting hairs here, but it's fun to do. But it's just the spacing aspect of it, and then I'm trying to think of how to word what is in my mind. just the offensive diversity, just to have a secondary weapon. I do think y'all are like Lee knocks him down, Booker knocks him down at a high rate, and then hopefully Holly can come on board. And in the tournament, if she gets hot, then other teams have a real problem.
Yeah.
Is there any type of team that you are concerned about playing in the tournament?
I mean, the teams that scare me most are teams that have good bigs. I mean, Texas's size is an advantage. I mean, it was a problem as badly as we got whipped, and we did, by South Carolina in the first game. Kyla was a problem in that first game. Yeah. And obviously the Kyla Taylor combination has been a problem for most teams because that's 6'4", 6'6", 6'10" wingspan. So size, and teams that actually have size inside to be able to compete with that game, I think is a problem. And I would say teams that have really, really good guards. I think we have, good guards. And I'm including, Madison Booker in that. Technically, I think she's a small forward. I don't know. But I include her, kind of in that guard thing. But I think, Rori obviously as the floor general. She still has one of the highest in the country assist to turnover ratio. But, the Hannah Hidalgos and Olivia Miles, I mean, obviously they were a problem for us. They played great.
For a lot of people.
They do. And Maddie Westphal didn't even play in that game, and so they didn't even have all their size. So a team like that is going to be a problem for us. And I respect all teams, but I think teams that concern me most are teams that have great guards, multiple great guards, and teams that have size, similar to what Texas brings. So it makes it hard for us to be able to get the ball inside. And it's hard to really kind of do what we want to do outside and what we do well because of the good guard play.
Am I right or am I wrong? I feel like when I watch Texas and the way that y'all defend and kind of how y'all control the pace of the game, I am less concerned about teams that can shoot the three, not only because y'all defend the three well, but like a free-flowing offense type team, I'm less concerned about y'all facing them, and I'm more concerned about like a chaotic, grinded-out team that is more comfortable playing ugly.
Yeah.
Is that
I think that's fair.
track?
I think that's fair. I mean, when you look, I mean, there are no easy games in the SEC as we're, kind of seeing. Not that we didn't know it. Vic knew it, obviously, but we're seeing it night in and night out. But you look at the games against like Ole Miss, which was a tight game for us. Tennessee, which was a tight game for us. Even in Missouri. That was a tight game for us. It was on the end of, we played 3 games in 6 days. So we were a little tired, at it, but, not making excuses. It really though was, they were really good on defense. It made it hard for us to kind of get into our sets. And, that team, kind of those types of teams gave us a little more trouble. I agree with you on that. And to your point, when I hear that, this team shoots the three well, that doesn't really scare me much because
I agree.
Every single time we play a team that, hits 10, 12 threes a game, they hit 3 against us. And so we can defend the 3 very well. So it is the teams that, are able to play a really strong offensive game, kind of half court offensive game. And, it seems like they're hustling and, doing a lot of great things and rebounding well like we do. So, kind of playing a similar game inside and can play a half court game like we play.
Yeah, that's really the times when I watch y'all and y'all saying struggle for a team that's this good is weird, but struggle.
I'll take it.
Yeah. It's mostly the teams that kind of remind me of y'all. I'm thinking back to even like the West Virginia game earlier this year. And you mentioned great guards too. They have fantastic guards.
Yeah, I have a lot of respect for Quinterly and West Virginia. I mean, obviously, coming from the Big 12, I don't think a lot of folks respected that win. I mean, because earlier we were coming in conference play, they're like, oh, Texas hasn't played anybody. And they were kind of downplaying the West Virginia win. I was like, West Virginia is a good team. Don't sleep on them. So, yeah.
Okay. I just kind of wanted, because the reason I ask is I do think that some of those, the way the seeding is working out, I'm expecting y'all to be a 1 seed. And so the way some of those teams are lining up, they could be a 4 or 5 seed, which you'd see in the Sweet 16, or 8 or 9 that you could see maybe in the second round. And those are the teams like the West Virginia, the North Carolina States, teams like that. So that is my only, that's just a matchup concern.
Yeah.
But again, we're splitting hairs. So don't worry, everybody.
It's called March Madness for a reason.
Exactly.
So, I mean, obviously, anything can happen to anybody, you know. So I'm not, discounting the chances of that happening. Obviously, like you, I think that we'll end up being 1, 2 at the lowest, which would mean that at least the first 2 rounds we're playing, at home, which is a huge advantage.
Huge.
And that's another thing I don't think SEC teams realize the advantage that Moody is, especially when it's full, like it will be tomorrow. Is that arena is actually smaller than Irwin Center that I used to go to games in, which is crazy that they built a smaller arena, but they literally built it so that, the fans are closer to the court, and it was built to be loud. And so folks who, the games that the men and women are selling out there, you always hear a lot. I even heard Dawn Staley's comments after the South Carolina game, and she was talking about the atmosphere and, what a great atmosphere it was for women's basketball. So that's another thing. I do think with the crowd starting to get there, for Texas women's basketball, Moody's going to become a bigger home court advantage. And they're undefeated at home right now, by the way. But I think it's going to become a bigger home court advantage for them as well.
Because I think, was it Stanford that lost at home last year?
Yeah.
And I no disrespect to Stanford, but 2 completely different environments.
Yeah.
I mean, you could just feel it through the TV. And I don't know. I know it's going to be loud. I'm looking forward to the LSU game, too, because that thing was loud. You could almost see it. I don't think South Carolina players get intimidated per se, but you could see that it was like,
I don't think they do.
It was like, oh, okay. I don't think you can be built like that in the SEC and survive for sure.
Yeah, I don't think they get intimidated at all. Don has those girls ready, and they are pros. But I do think they probably were a little surprised, like, oh, kind of like you. I didn't know Texas really had fans like this, and they're really loud. So I do think it was probably a little bit like, okay, it's going to be like that. So let's go. So
definitely.
It ain't colonial life. I ain't saying that, but I do think they're getting a home court advantage for real.
Definitely. So another concern, I would like to see some easier shots for Madison Booker. I think that kind of ties into the spacing thing. Also, another thing that I think coaches do with talented wing scorers, the example I'm going to use is Juju Watkins, even though Vic doesn't do this nearly as much as Gottlieb does it with Juju, where the offense sometimes feels overly reliant on them creating and making tough shots. And the shot diet feels like junk food for me, where it should be like, hey, I probably shouldn't have Whataburger for 3 meals.
Yeah.
This is something, if the shot clock's running low or we need a bucket or it's late, then we create. We let Madison do it. But I would like to see her get some easier opportunities where she catches the ball in a position where she already has an advantage versus having to create one on her own. Is that something you see?
I think it's probably fair. And I can't speak for Vic, obviously, but she's so good at hitting those tough shots. I mean,
you kind of want to see her do it.
So smooth at it. I mean, literally she goes up and elevates, and it's mid range, and it's like woo, hand in the face. And obviously teams are game planning to stop her. I mean, South Carolina had Bree Hall on her, like when the plane landed in Austin. Bree Hall was checking Madison. So, it's part of it is that, but definitely you see sometimes they'll screen the bigs for them and that type thing. definitely she gets more open looks in zone. That's why I kind of don't mind when teams play zone, against us is, she's usually, like you said, the way that they shoot them out of it. But I agree with you. She definitely has some tough looks. She's had 2 game winners this year. Neither of them were, to me, easy shots. She usually gets 1 or 2 layups, but it's usually as function of, a turnover, that kind of thing, steal. So, yeah, I think it's fair to say, they should be able to get her some easier shots. It's obvious that they have plays that they run for her, and she's so effective at them that, maybe from a spacing standpoint, getting her an easier shot means something else. I'm not sure. But I think the way that they've been able to rely on her when they need to get a shot, it's worked.
That's a great weapon to have.
Yeah.
Because I guess the game I'm going back to, I went to the first South Carolina-Texas game, and she had a tough game. 3 for 19. And the first play of the second half, I believe, someone correct me if I'm wrong. Obviously, I'm okay with good comments, so correct me if I'm wrong.
I was going to say, I can't correct you. I recorded it. I did not rewatch it.
I did not blame you. I'm not going to rewatch the last one, so we're even.
Okay.
But I think it was the first play of the second half. Y'all came out and ran a play that got her a wide open layup, and she missed it because here's the thing about wide open shots when you've been grinding it out for a half against a defender like Bree Hall. Wide open shots do not feel like wide open shots at that moment. Yes. But I remember thinking, this was a fantastic play. It got a wide open look. Why are we waiting until the beginning of the second half to do this? Why not do this the beginning of the second quarter or sometimes something to get her rolling early versus that? And so that's kind of just one of the plays that comes to mind. But again, like you're saying, it's like a good problem to have because, well, on the one hand, she has to take tough shots. On the other hand, she can make them because she's Madison Booker. So
exactly, and that's kind of the thing is it's hard to feel like you've got to tweak something because it's worked so well. South Carolina game aside, and to your point, I give South Carolina and specifically Bree Hall a lot of credit for the defense she played on Booker that first game. But Madison had a lot of looks that she normally makes in that game. And I think Texas overall, and I will include her in that, was shook. I was definitely disappointed. I expected them to play better. I can't say I was expecting them to win, but I was expecting them to play better, that first game. And, every single person on that team, no one on Texas's team, no one had ever played South Carolina before, period. Shea Holly was a freshman on the team that played against them in the Elite Eight that first year with Big Shavers, but she didn't play in that game. And, it wasn't, it was by then Elite Eight. So, it wasn't in Colonial Life. And then they never, I don't think, played in an arena to have, 18,000 folks.
Boy, it was loud.
Yeah,
it was
exactly.
loud.
Yeah. So I think it took them a while. But something that was lost in that, as bad as that beatdown was, and it was bad, they played even the second half. I mean, and as bad as we still shot the second half, they played them even. And, not that you have moral victories. The other thing that happened in that first game was the freshmen got to play. So, Lee got on the floor and got minutes. Brianna Preston got minutes.
Preston got a lot of time,
Exactly. Jacqueline Winantanda. And it was huge because when Amo went down, all those people had to play a lot more, and especially in this second South Carolina game. And then it wasn't as scary, going up against, big bad South Carolina because, they'd experienced it at least before. So
that's a great point. And kind of ties into another concern I want to get into related to the bigs, mostly experience with the bigs, with Aaliyah Moore going down. And can you let me know what's going on with Justice Carlton? Because I know she hasn't been really playing that much.
Yeah.
And I know Oldacre has really come on strong as of late. You mentioned Winantanda. You see the flashes there, and she still kind of seems to be adjusting to playing in the front court.
Yeah. She's a natural guard. She just got
Yes.
length. And with, Amo out, I think she was kind of next man up there. And she's done well. I think she's playing her game, in the 4 spot. But she's not a true post, bang them down low. That's not how she's built. That's not her game. But she can do things that other posts can't. And so it's really led to her starting. And then when she subs out, usually they're bringing in Jordan Lee and playing 4 guards. And, Jordan Lee's got height. Shay's got height. Obviously, Madison Booker's 6'1". So it's really, Rori and, 6 foots out there. So they can usually hang even if other, teams have size. To answer your question on Justice, I'm not 100% sure. She played well early on. She had a 30-point game, in the tournament.
SEC Freshman of the Week, I believe.
Yeah, she was. She was SEC National Player Freshman of the Week.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, so played really well. Vic is very hard on his players, and there are obviously some things that she's needing to do from a down low. He's described her before and said she's one of the most physical, high schoolers he's seen. And I think her mom, played some professional ball or at least college level ball. So, I think she's more mature from that standpoint. My gut is that probably the level of physicality. Because conference, she was definitely playing a lot more minutes. And even in the South Carolina game, Amo got into early foul trouble and Justice Carlton came in before, when Intanda did. And it's flipped now. And so I think a lot of it is just maybe the physicality. She's definitely been getting minutes. If, we're blowing folks out, she's getting a few minutes here and there. But she's definitely got something. And so I really hope she, hangs in there because I feel like, she's got an opportunity as long as Amo's out. And I think she's super talented. So if she's, patient and stays the course, I think she's going to be, great for us, if not this year, definitely next year.
Yeah, that's something that like freshmen go through. I feel like we've been spoiled recently with a bunch of great freshmen who
Juju, Hannah, Madison, Audie Crooks, good Lord.
But this is kind of what it's supposed to be like. Where, we've got some growing pains. We got to come have a seat for a little bit. And then maybe we'll get back on later, maybe next year. And along with that, Kyla Oldacre, her progression, we saw her at Miami. Didn't seem like a great fit. We know what Vic does with post players. Do you see her playing an even bigger role come March Madness, or you think she's going to hang around this 20-minute space that she's currently at?
Yeah, again, it's not like I've got, Vic on speed dial. So, this is 100% Kim Singleton here. But from watching, the games and from hearing how, Coach Schaefer talks about them, he consistently says, that's my 2-headed monster. And so I almost kind of see when you talked earlier about, the 3-point teams and them having kind of a dominant All-American big. When I look at Kyla and Taylor, I literally combine their minutes and their stats. And that's the way I view them. And I think that's kind of the way Vic Schaefer does. It's worked really, really well to have them almost split minutes, and it's almost, 20 minutes each.
Right down the middle.
And combined, they've been, 20 plus points, 12, 13 rebounds a game, and highly efficient. And so, I think that they have a little bit, they kind of jokingly call themselves Twin Towers and so forth, and, that type thing. I think that they have a little different skill set. Both move better than I think they get credit for. I think that most people just see their size, and kind of just intimidated by their size and think all they do is kind of just, grab the assist and put it in the bucket and can get rebounds. But both of them move pretty well and, Kyla was impressing me. She did try to do too much on one of those and she was trying to drive it in. I was like, Kyla, give it up to the guard.
Do that.
but she had another steal. And that time she did push it to Booker, who had the nice layup. Taylor, I've seen her had to defend some bigs, you know, out near the 3-point line and so forth. I think Taylor is better suited for that, though, if they're playing the type of team that has bigs that play out wider. And obviously, I think Kyla's, you know, more suited for, you know, kind of the inside game and just can dominate there, you know, especially when folks are trying to double and triple team her. It doesn't seem to faze her at all. I think, you know, Vic is going to continue to play both of them right around the same amount of minutes because, you know, I have yet to see a game where both of them get shut down. And so whether it's foul trouble or one is just more effective than the other, that's one of the things I like about, you know, Vic Schaefer, and it's regardless of who it is, you know, with the bigs, even with Rori, I've seen it lately. If somebody's hot, he leaves them out there. And I don't care who it is. You know, if someone's hot and they're playing well, he doesn't bring them to the bench. He doesn't sub them out. So he's been consistent with that. And so if Kyla's hot, he'll leave her out there for Taylor. If Taylor's hot, you know, she'll finish the game. But, you know, I think he'll continue to start Taylor, bring Kyla in, and then just kind of figure out who's more effective in that situation.
Yeah, I was trying to look this season, and I could not find a game where they both had a bad game. So that's pretty good to have. You mentioned Rori. That's probably my final concern, where she hasn't looked like the Rori Harmon we're used to seeing.
Yeah.
She's had a pretty tough run recently, too. Last 8 games, 27% from the field, just 1 game in double digits. Assists have been kind of hanging solid, but a little bit of a downward trend. I don't think assists are always the best metric to judge playmaking, though. They miss a lot of things that playmakers do.
That is true.
For you, is there a huge concern for Rori, or just, hey, it's given a chance to let Preston kind of get some experience and be ready herself?
Yeah, I can't. I mean, you can't watch Texas after watching them, you know, the last, you know, couple of years and say that Rori's the same as she was, you know, before at this point. I can't say I fully expected that. I mean, she came back in 10 months, which is amazing. Worked her butt off to come back in 10 months. And everything I've heard, again, I told you I'm a football fan, about ACL injuries. They say it usually takes a year. And then usually you're not completely yourself until the following season.
Correct.
You know, I have no idea what Rori's going to do, but when I heard that she got the medical red shirt for last year, my gut was she's going to come back. And so, you know, and especially considering I don't think she's done enough for her draft stock to be where she would probably want it to be, because I'm sure she wants to play in the W. My gut is that she probably will come back and be more like herself. You know, to your point, though, I agree, you know, assist to turnover ratio isn't the be all end all. Before a point guard, that's where I start. And that was always, to me, the two biggest parts of Rori's game were the fact that she, you know, was huge with assists and making good decisions. She doesn't turn the ball over a lot, and she was a great defender. I mean, she was, you know, her sophomore year, Big 12, you know, defensive player of the year, and at, you know, 5'6".
Yeah, you were doing some defending at that point.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And she's still, you know, 2.5 steals a game. So she's consistent with that. But, you know, the UConn game, you know, last year before she tore her ACL, she scored 30 points in that game. She took over that Baylor game that I was talking about, you know, from an offensive standpoint. And that's the thing that you're not seeing. She's always kind of had that ability, you know, despite her height, to kind of elevate. She's had that nice floater. And I haven't seen the floater as much. I think she's elevating, but a lot of her shots have been short. And I don't know if it's just, you know, kind of getting her wind back after, you know, having to defend some of the better players. Good Lord, she ran Georgia Amore all over the court, and did extremely well, by the way, to hold Georgia down. I think she had 14 or so points in that game. So defensively, I think she's still Rori. Running the offense, she's still Rori. The offensive output is definitely down. You know, is it a concern? No, because I think that, to me, she's still the best eyes and ears on the court for Vic Schaefer and getting them into what they need to get into. She's still the PG I want in the closing seconds of a tight game. And I trust Rori to make, you know, the best decisions. And if Rori's going to take a shot, it's going to be a good shot. She may not make it, but she's not going to take a crazy shot. She's going to get them in the offense to either give herself an opportunity at a good look or to set, one of her teammates up for, a good look. So, but I mean, it hasn't hurt at all, though, that Brianna Preston, who was a 4-star, so, still a really high recruit. But I don't think most folks casually were expecting a whole lot from her coming in, backing up Rori Harmon. But from everything that I was hearing, in the off season, them working out against each other, were giving each other fits, which I think is a great thing. Iron sharpens iron. And I think that has helped both of them to get better. And everything that I've heard, they are, competitive with each other in a helpful way, that they are, both wanting the best for the team. And I think, Brianna sees herself as that person who comes in, after Rori, getting them in good sets. She's got a gear that is crazy, crazy shot. And I mean, I love her energy. So, I mean, to me, she's the perfect, point guard to come in backing up Rori, bringing in energy and so forth like that. She definitely is a little more turnover prone, but she's a freshman. You expect that.
Yep.
But she has an extra gear that I think, when, Rori sits down, they're not ready for what Brianna's bringing.
Yeah. I think you're spot on with your analysis of Bri Preston, because she is just a dog. And you're right. The turnovers, sometimes the energy is a little bit too much.
It is.
It's like I had an old coach tell me all the time, fire can either heat a house or it can burn it down. Sometimes the house burns down. Okay.
Sure.
That's some of the growing pains we talked about earlier that you have to live with freshmen. But it's more important to me to see her or a Jordan Lee, especially on defense too, where they're just fearless with, okay, I'm going to pick you up full court. This is how it's going to go. We're going to do this as long as Vic leaves me in the game. Yeah. And I'm wondering,
and you may not have noticed, I mean, Jordan's been like the key defender on like some key moments at the end of games lately. I mean, that's how good she is a defender. Yeah. She was the one, it was a switch. It started out as Shea on Tessa, but it switched over to Jordan on Tessa's last shot to win the South Carolina game. And so Jordan's defense has been, she again, just not getting enough good credit. And then Vic started playing Rori and Bri Preston together a lot too. And again, I think it's what, she brings defensively, as another person, especially if it's a speedy point guard or, that type of thing, someone who can really stay with them. And so when they've got, Rori, who's a great defender, Shea is a really good defender. She was Big 12 all defensive team last year. Obviously Jordan, Bri, Booker is an underrated defender, I think, as well. They can get after you. Those guards can get after you.
Definitely. And going back to Rori, I think something that I've discounted personally, and I think other people might be doing it as well, in terms of, you hear the broadcasters talk about, well, her mile time's faster than ever. Her squat is greater than ever. She squats more weight than she did before the injury, all this stuff. There's something about basketball where it's a rhythm game, and I think it's even more so a rhythm game for a point guard offensively.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think that's what's going on here. And so I do think, I agree with you. I think she'll come back because, I mean, next year, more of the same with y'all, essentially. Yeah. And I do think, like, if she's back to the Rori Harmon we saw in that UConn game, what are we doing for our draft stock and our national championship chances? So I think you're right that. So I'm hoping she continues to find that rhythm, but it is weird to look out there and she hasn't had really that signature Rori Harmon game this year where she's had it once or twice, if not more, each season coming into this one. So
I think that's fair. I do discount her stats a little from last year because she didn't play, in conference at all. Exactly. So it, other than UConn, it was, kind of a soft non-conference schedule. And so, she was shooting like 52% and, leading the country assist to turnover ratio, like 7.5 assists a game, 1 turnover. I mean, it's crazy high, and averaging like 14 points a game and so forth. So it really was off the charts in terms of how she started the year. But I would have expected those numbers to come down a little bit had she played conference. So I compared a little bit more to her freshman sophomore year. And when you look at those numbers, she's, comparable to those, even in points, is not dramatically, under. Efficiency's about the same. So, but I still feel like she needs to, have a higher offensive output, especially, if she's going to, go pro. At her height, it's already going to be something that's going to be talked about. That's something when folks come after me on the comments, it's one of the things I hear all the time. Rori's not going to grow. And I was like, she's been 5'6" her whole career and it's worked out for her. So, but I think obviously if she's going to WNBA, she's going to have to improve the offensive output. So I agree with you on that.
Definitely. So I think we've done enough to where you might have affected my bracket when I fill it out. So
that's the goal.
Now that we covered that, I'm going to clear out. I'm going to let you tell everyone why they need to hurry up and tap into Texas women's basketball.
Well, first and foremost, because, we just sold out the LSU games. We're starting to sell out games. So y'all need to hurry up because, Moody only holds 11,000. So you need to hurry up and get your tickets and so forth. And this is me in Dallas not being the season ticket holder. So I need to as well. But no, Texas women's basketball played, to me, a really, really cool brand of basketball. We're top 10 offensive rating, defensive rating. And, as we've talked a lot about, it's not because they're a great 3-point shooting team from an offensive standpoint, but they do so many things that add to the offensive output. They're getting second chance points by out rebounding you. I think they're second only to LSU in terms of, rebounds per game. They're, doing, a lot in terms of that turnover margin. They're always going to turn over their opponents, usually more than, they are turned over. And a lot of those are live ball turnovers. So it's not, where they're having to bring the ball in out the court. It's, steal and layup. They, are getting to the line and they're getting extra points from the free throw line. That's another thing too. Rori, Shea, last year were not good 3-point shooters. Both of them have really worked on that aspect of their game. And as a team, they're not just getting to the line. They're making their free throws at a high clip. So they're doing a lot of things that add to the offensive output. And then they are going to man you up. They very seldom play zone, but they are going to man you up on defense, and they switch better. I mean, it's to me a pretty defensive game to watch, just how efficient they are as a team and the team defense that they play. I think that's the thing that's been underrated a little bit with them, especially coming off of the first South Carolina game. Because I think a lot of the reason Texas was, underrated was people had really only seen Texas nationally in 2 games, Notre Dame and the first South Carolina game. And if those were the 2 you saw, I get it. You don't think much of us. We lost both of them, albeit one of them in overtime. But since that time, they've gotten much better output from Madison Booker, much better output from Taylor Jones, the other post. And so they literally have an inside post game that I think is second to none. And that's Lauren Betts, single person up against my 2-headed monster. So I'll say it that way. And the team defense that they're playing, they are very connected from a defensive standpoint. So every single shot you get, Rebecca Lobo used the word smothering. You're going to work for every point you get. Vic Schaefer has a show now called 94 Feet. They are picking you up 94 feet, and you're going to have to work for every single shot. So what they do offensively in terms of being able to get extra points and so forth and consistently be 70, 80 points a game, and they are honestly pissed if you get 60, regardless as to who you are, because of how well they play defense. I really think that that's what puts them in the hunt to compete well against anybody. I told you I've never said that I think they're the best team, in the country. And even after beating South Carolina and this murderous road that they've been in the midst of with, Vanderbilt and then South Carolina, Kentucky, and tomorrow LSU, they're in the midst of a really good, difficult stretch. Even with those wins, though, I still think that, there are teams that are better, and I still would say South Carolina is better. But I definitely feel like they deserve to be a number 1 seed. I think that, as a 10-2, I think is their quad 1 record. And nobody has more quad 1 wins than Texas. South Carolina has 10 as well, but nobody has more. And so, to me, they've got the resume, they've got the skins on the wall, and they are playing, to me, an exciting, high-level, elite, brand of basketball offensively and defensively. And I'm excited to see what they do going forward. So they're gonna give you a game every time. I think they're going to show up and play.
See, if y'all come in my comments and you can quote quad 1 wins, maybe you can come on the show instead of talking about me because I said something about your team you disagree with. So there you go. That is a fantastic argument. I mean, y'all are hooping right now. I mean, you're beating the teams.
We're doing the thing. We're doing the schedule makers did not help us with this little road that we're in the midst of. I was geez, I was like, I get it. You don't get a night off, but yeah, they didn't help us on this one. But if we can get past LSU, and again, I very seldom predict wins. I think it's a game we should win. We're at home, and I think I fully respect LSU. Obviously, I know a whole lot about Kim Mulkey from her Baylor days, and love her name. But between Flage and Michaela and Anissa Morrow, who Texas has played, we played her at DePaul, and we killed DePaul. But I was like, who is this girl who we cannot keep off the boards? She can ball. So much respect for LSU's game. I didn't respect them that much early in the season with that soft schedule.
Well, they always do that.
Yeah, but they've done that thing. I got to give it to them. They beaten Tennessee twice. I mean, you've got to respect them, and they played South Carolina much better than we did the first time. So much respect their game, but I definitely think Texas, as long as they're not tired, LSU's coming off a bye their previous game, so they haven't played in a week, and we played obviously Thursday. But if we play our game, I think it'll be a tight game, and we should win. And if we can get past that one. Maybe you could tell me, Brandon, I've been wondering if Texas wins out and South Carolina wins out, are they co-champions or is there a tiebreaker?
This has been something I've been trying to find an answer to, and I have not found an answer to it yet, because that is so weird. Because normally I feel like with SEC schedule, you only play the one time, and then you've got, there we go. We just know just from that one game. But this is very confusing to me. So if you're a listener and you know about quad 1 wins and you know about SEC tiebreakers, please let us know.
Yeah,
this might be the only thing that has stumped us, because if we don't know it, then they need to let this information be more freely, widely known. Because if we haven't figured it out, I got all this stuff highlighted.
Yes,
Kim's talking about quad 1 wins and net ratings and everything. If we don't know it, what are we doing?
Yeah, they're hiding it from us. Okay, so I agree. If you don't know, I'll put it. If you don't know it, they're trying to keep it secret. But I am curious about that. So yeah.
Yes. So I'm sure we'll find out soon. Because I do agree. I think y'all are number 1 seed, and especially you win tomorrow. I cannot imagine what would have to happen for that not to be the case. Yeah. So we'll see. I do think I'm in agreement with you. I think coming into Texas and beating Texas, even for Kim Mulkey, I think that will be a tall task, even though LSU, they've got a squad.
They do.
We'll see. It's going to be fun.
All right.
A couple good games on. South Carolina and UConn.
South Carolina and UConn.
So
yeah.
Very
so
excited.
I think you really are seeing a cool new era of women's college basketball. So, for years it was obviously just UConn, and then, you saw South Carolina come up. and that's why, I don't hate on anybody's team. I love what USC is doing. I love what Notre Dame is doing. I love what Texas is doing. I love what LSU is doing. So to me, it's cool having a good basket of, really, really skilled teams that folks get to see on a national level and see, oh yeah, the women can hoop.
Definitely. And that's one reason too, like we talked about, I needed to talk to a Texas fan because there was a gang of y'all in that arena when South Carolina showed up. So I knew someone's
we're here. We're here.
Yes.
Now, I'm gonna say this for a little bit of my Texas love, just to because we are cocky fans. But realize, unlike most fan bases that like have one sport to support, because think of other sports that South Carolina is elite in. You struggle, right?
That's why I lost all my hair.
Or that LSU is elite in. But, Texas, football, 2 consecutive years in, college football playoff. Our women's volleyball team, back-to-back national champions. Our women's softball team is number 1 right now. Played in 2 of the last 3, national championships games. It's really what we do. It's only our men's basketball team that's struggling right now. And so we have a lot of stuff to root for in Texas. So sometimes it doesn't look like enough of us are there to support the women's basketball team. But I think with what they're doing, the Texas fans are starting to rally around them. And I think that's a really good thing.
Yeah, it's going to be a tall task to overcome football. I know how football is.
We're serious about our football in Texas. You know that.
Number 2 might need to be the women's hoops teams. And I think one other thing I think we can agree on, because you mentioned you didn't hate any team, but I do hate Texas A&M football for their program, Texas A&M football. Y'all were in my comments one time dragging me the same year y'all had to give that big check to Jimbo Fisher. And I was right about everything I said. And so Texas A&M football, I do hate on your program. And Clemson, of course, but Texas A&M.
Oh,
so there we go.
Well, I chuckle, of course, because I can pop off some good Aggie jokes. They really, really hate us, and us coming to the SEC, nobody was more persuaded about it than the folks in College Station. But that delights us to no end, because it's kind of like they thought they were kind of sticking it to us by leaving the Big 12. And I'm like, you did nothing in the Big 12. I mean, in SEC. And then we arrive and, our first year there, go to the SEC championship game in football and won in SEC in soccer. And, where are y'all in women's basketball? Do y'all have a basketball team? I don't know.
You might need to come back on football season too. And, we might do some more March Madness stuff as well. But Kim, I cannot thank you enough for coming on. This has been a fantastic conversation. We just tried to end the show on a nice note.
Yes. And by the way, that was
right after talking about those Aggies too. There's a conspiracy. There's no way we're going to find a thread on the Tex Ags, that board they got, where they were like, yeah, and then she was saying nice stuff about him right after he was talking trash about us, and we just cut the internet, and that was that. I know it was you, Texas A&M.
That's funny. Yeah, we got to get it right. That was 100% my fault. So I came in and got my laptop and, chit-chatting with you. Didn't see that I didn't plug it up. So, yeah, my battery just went dead. That was all on me.
Okay. Sorry, Texas A&M. I did not mean to slander you. I take it back. The football stuff I said earlier, I mean, but y'all didn't cut off the internet. Okay. But no, thank you so much for coming on. I really do appreciate it.
No, Brandon, I so appreciate this. I mean, and what I wanted to say to you is I really, really appreciate what you do. And I said this to you in your comments because it's obvious to me that you're doing your homework. I could not do what you do in knowing the players on all these different teams. Obviously, I support my team. I know my team. I know, the headline players for the other teams. But the level of work that you're putting in to be able to put women's basketball and women's sports on the forum you're putting it on, to me, it's super cool. So I applaud what you're doing. And I mean, to me, it's cool that I get to be a part of it in some small way.
No, I really appreciate it. I gotta get my facts right to keep up with you. So that's a good motivator. But no, definitely come back on, especially if y'all win a national championship. You definitely have to come back on.
I will definitely come back on. You hit me up when we win the national championship.
Win. I got it.
And I'd love to come back. But either way, I can assure you, I am going to enjoy the rest of this women's basketball season.
You and me both. This has been another episode of Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silvers. Appreciate y'all watching, listening, rating, subscribing, reviewing, sharing, commenting, checking out everything that I am doing and all my incredible guests as well. Don't forget to subscribe to my weekly sports watch guide. The link for that is in the show notes. Other than that, enjoy these great hoops we got coming up, and I will catch y'all later.
Welcome.